When the Wizards and Sixers met up to play in Philly the other night, no one knew what was in store with so many starters sitting this one out. Tyrese Maxey went off in the third quarter. It looked like the ending of this game wouldn't even matter as the Sixers built a 15-point lead to start the fourth. But Jared Butler, Corey Kispert, and his mustache had something to say about it by leading the Wiz all the way back. And who knew that this outlet pass would lead to the biggest triggering of NBA Twitter this season? When Kyle Kuzma batted the pass out of the air, let it float in front of him, and then bobbled the gather before going into his Euro step, everyone felt the need to weigh in, including Sixers coach Nick Nurse, who somehow didn't get a technical foul despite these histrionics. Jared Butler certainly wants it as he knows Nurse came all the way onto the court during live play. He doesn't call timeout until here before dropping F-bombs in the ref's face. But was he right to be upset? Should this play be a double dribble that he was so vociferously calling for? Well, let's look at the rules and how they all fit together. In Section 2 for the dribble, it's clear the player must have control of the ball for it to be considered a dribble. We then move down the page to the gather section, where control is clearly defined as the point where a player holds it, changes hands, passes, shoots, or cradles the ball against his body. Now, ask yourself, based on the 3 fingers that briefly touch the ball, can Kuzma do any of the 5 things listed? Does he immediately begin dribbling it, or does the ball freely float down court 10 feet while he takes 2 more steps? Now, if you feel like the referee screwed this up, wouldn't it make sense that we'd actually see other plays just like this called the double dribble? Well, it turns out we have seen this happen before, and guess what? The refs did the same exact thing as we saw in the Kuzma play. Absolutely nothing. Back in 2012, here's Dwayne Wade batting the ball after it ricocheted off his head before he then gathers it to establish legal control and then dribble it. Does what he do with his left hand differ that much from what Kuzma did? In 2021, we see Dorian Finney-Smith bat the ball down out of the air to the floor. Remember that one of these 5 things must happen to establish control. Since they don't, he's free to begin his dribble after putting both hands on the ball. Of course, Steve Kerr is unfamiliar with how the rule is written, and he did get a technical foul for arguing for something that, by rule, did not happen. Here's the same play in college, where the receiver bats the ball out of the air to the floor in front of him before gathering it and then dribbling, much to the misplaced chagrin of the opposing coach. This rule, believe it or not, is the same at every level in every league. I don't think Coach Kerr was complaining when Klay Thompson did the same thing 2 seasons ago, and this triggered everyone on Twitter as well as Anthony Davis in real time. But again, Klay never establishes legal control as he fumbles the catch until he can properly establish that control with both hands on the ball. It's actually more impressive to me that the referees got this call right. And make no mistake, Kyle Kuzma is a student of the game and understands the rules as well as anybody, which is why he could piece both the tapping of an uncontrolled ball into a delayed gather before hitting the defender with a gorgeous Euro step finish. Here's another example of an announcer not knowing the rules.
The jump stop to the big step.
What do you think? Should that be a travel?
All of a sudden they stopped calling that travel.
As Brian Scalabrine thinks they stopped calling this a travel, when the truth is a one-footed step through has always been legal since practically the dribble was invented, and Kyle Kuzma knows this. One of the reasons why these rules aren't being learned by fans properly is because we still have announcers out there that don't know them well enough either. Stan Van Gundy has been a coach longer than most people on Twitter have been alive, and yet listen to what he says here.
There's not one person watching the game that doesn't think that should be called a double dribble. They can give me all the technical stuff they want, that's a double dribble.
Despite the NBA refs weighing in both for this play and the Kuzma tap, fans are still unwilling to accept what the rules actually say. Probably because at some point when they were young, a coach they respected told them something vague about the double dribble rule that simply wasn't accurate. It's not easy to change someone's mind once it's solidified, but that's what I'm asking you to do here, and also by playing NBA Fantasy with PrizePicks. This is by far the most fun I have had on any app when trying to figure out whether players will get more or less in certain stats. Tonight I'm going with Desmond Bane to drop some buckets against the Spurs, while Wemby should also be able to get above 19.5 points on the other side of the ball. Let's finish my picks off with Derek White Mama lighting up the Toronto backcourt on the road. Let's go! You can now win up to 1,000 times your money, and I know when these picks hit, I'll get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Best of all, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Because of how upset people were at the refs on this play, I had to bring in Ronnie Nunn to the show. Ronnie was an NBA referee for 19 years and a director of development for 5 more. So Ronnie, I'm so glad that you're here to help us. We need this help. We're really struggling here. People are triggered on Twitter and not understanding the rules. So we got to break it down into 2 pieces, I think, because there's a couple things we can learn. So jump into this really quickly. The very beginning piece of this play is all about whether or not Kyle Kuzma has control over the ball. So can you walk us through how a referee in the NBA like yourself would adjudicate this play?
Well, the key is when the ball is first tapped off the hand of Kuzma, we have to determine, and that's a decision by the official, whether it's part of a deflection of the ball or does he really have a controlled dribble. Even though the rule book would call about a tap is a dribble, it still has to be a controlled dribble. And right there is a slap down to where I think he wants to get control of the play, okay? But I don't think he has control of the dribble. In slow-mo, it may appear that he has control, but this in real time is not. This is a tap that doesn't seem controlling to me. Now we're going into the next section of it, and all of a sudden we see some fumbling. So you can actually fumble from one end of the court to the other without having control of the ball, and everybody in the stands is going to believe it's a travel. It isn't. A fumble while a person is trying to gather the ball is nothing. So this is a fumble until now. When he gets now, he's back on his left foot. Right there, he's back on his left foot. That's 0. And now he can begin his dribble and his motion because he's a motion player. Now, if he were in a static position, he could not release the ball to dribble without lifting his pivot foot. So he's got to keep his pivot foot down. But when you're in motion, that's a 0 step. So it's the first step that's his pivot. Let's take a peek at this right now. Here's your fumbling. Oh, it looks like a gather, but no, not yet, because it's going to pop right off his hand again. And here now he's going to gather. When he gathers this ball, his left foot is down. 0. This is a motion progressive player in motion.
Okay, and just so we're clear, here's the rule for a progressing player, which is different than when a player catches it when not moving. He is allowed to take 1 step before he must release the ball into a dribble, and that means he can lift the left foot off the floor, but he must release the ball before that left foot comes back down. If he doesn't do that, it constitutes a second step and hence a travel.
Now he must release the ball, and he does. And he releases it right here, and now he can either continue dribbling or gather. And he gathers on his left foot. He goes back to right, now to left, and now he's got to go up to release, and that's just what he does. So when you think about this play, it can be illusionary to think that he just ran with the ball from midcourt line all the way to the hoop, which is not true. And you've got to really register this play on knowing when he actually gathers the ball. And here it is again. There it is. The left foot is a gather. He steps right, number 1. He Euro steps, number 2. And he's on his way, launching to the hoop. Legal.
Well, thanks so much again for doing that and explaining that the way you did. It was really, really helpful. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Ronnie?
I'm in, Coach. Glad to be with you as always.